Hey everybody, and welcome to the Linus Gillgren and Fabian Spiess podcast here, presented by Athletes USA. We are delighted that you are joining us here today. How delighted are you, Fabian, to be on this?
Absolutely delighted. I know this is something that we've been speaking about really for the last, since coronavirus hit. Really, I think we started to speak a lot about our own experiences as professional athletes, and I think what we wanted to do was to share that with not only Athletes USA recruits or potential recruits, but really any young student athlete. Or anyone who's trying to forge a career as a professional. And we just wanted to share about our experiences and talk, what it means to be an athlete.
It's really, we wanted to do it in person. That's when we got started with this. But then when Corona kind of delayed us, and we figured, well, Zoom is so good nowadays. Why don't we try it on here, right?
Yeah, so, I think there's the world of Zoom has just really taken off, especially with coronavirus and everything. We can do in person. We can, for the majority of parts, do over Zoom. I think we were speaking about this today, weren't we? We were sort of discussing sometimes the difficulties of how it's been being at home, not being able to have that social contact with other people and meet in person, isn't it?
And the recordings are great on here. And from my point of view, it's, just a little backstory who we are. So my name is Linus Gillgren. I played college golf in Arkansas, Little Rock for 4 years. And if we just look at that, it was just such a turning point for me as a person, and growing up, and culture-wise, it was just a shock. And it really formed me into the person I am today. And I couldn't be more thankful to the NCAA and college sports in general for giving me that opportunity to play college sports. And when I played pro for almost 7-8 years, and we're going to go into that more in detail later on. But I had the chance to start helping athletes just like myself. And it's just so much fun to be able to see new athletes kind of go on the same road trip that I did. And, we teamed up together here earlier this spring, and I could immediately, feel that bond with us from my personal view that we can, even if we are doing different sports, it's just so much fun to work with athletes. And then you see the tendencies and I wouldn't say the depression that's hit us now during COVID with everything. And you can see it in the athletes' eyes, and you can see it just people graduating from high school. They don't get the regular graduation that they normally would. And the issues that we normally would have with, how should I pack my bags? What should I bring is more, when can I go? Will I be able to play during COVID? And it's been, in a sense, very depressive time to be an athlete foremost. It's very tough, but it hits people. But I think that it hits athletes more just because we work with something that's considered entertainment in a sense, right? But for us, it's not entertainment, it's life. So we wanted to bring this podcast to life, and hopefully bring a little bit of a candle in the world that's going on right now, that there is another side, and experiences, and give motivation and then also information for you as an athlete, or as a parent, or just as a person that want to know more how it is to be an athlete. That's from my point of view. And then obviously you have a Swedish guy that has a little bit of a broken English, and then you have a German / Spanish and English guy living there with a British accent. So I think it's a good combination, as Stewie would say.
Yeah, absolutely. My background is obviously a little bit different to yours, in that we play different sports. I didn't choose college sport at the time. I went down the professional route straight away, but I certainly learned a lot through my experiences as well. Wouldn't change it for anything in the world, because it's who I am today, because of the experiences I lived. I did always have an inclination towards college sports, and what that would give to me as a person. I've always traveled with my family when I've been younger, and going to the US at one point was something that was quite intriguing to me. But obviously I'd worked hard to try and get a professional contract, and this is what I see with the majority of young athletes, especially in football, that they want to try and pursue that route first and foremost. And I understand that. But at the same time, I would always say, to try and have your backup plan. And the reason I say that is from my own experience where, I had a short career in football. It didn't last that long. And really
You
my
had a pretty
perception.
impressive career, though. Why don't you tell them us a little bit more about your career? Because you were a pretty good soccer player.
Yeah, I mean, where it all started was, my childhood. I was brought up in different countries, so I moved to Dubai at a young age, where it's not a big footballing nation. After that, moved to Spain, where really I started to play football because I went to school there, and I started playing with friends, and I really started to love the game. And I was getting to a good point where I was starting to get interest from clubs in Spain and in the youth leagues. And at that point, my parents moved back to Dubai again, so it was back to sort of square one. And I trialed a little bit at some professional clubs there, although again in the youth leagues. But I was scouted by, well, he's a friend now of mine, but I was scouted over there by a club called Notts County. And essentially, I also went to trials at Everton, and I had the choice to where do I want to go. So I decided to go to Notts County because the motto we always had was, if you're good enough, you'll make it. So I decided to choose a club which was maybe a little bit lower ranked than, for example, Everton. But I decided to go down that route with a belief that, if I'm good enough, I'll make it. And ultimately, that sort of paid off for me. I ended up playing in the youth team pretty well. Got a professional contract, was gaining interest from a lot of the bigger clubs. And really for me, it was just a change in manager that sort of my career just changed from one day to the next. Up until then, I had really enjoyed it, my whole experience in football. And although it started to get tougher because, the more you go into football and the more serious, life as an athlete becomes, your livelihood, your family depend on it, your wages, there's more pressure I start to build and put on myself. And ultimately that made it harder for me. And I was doing quite well up until then. And I played in the third division in the UK for a couple of years. Didn't make too many appearances in the end, to be honest. But, it sort of led me to a belief where I want to try and use my own experiences to help others, especially in that, always have a plan B, always have hobbies outside of your sport. And really, what we are taught is a tunnel vision in sport is a good thing. In my experience, it wasn't, because again, I didn't have other things to focus on, and I put too much pressure on myself because I had a sole belief that, I had to make it. If I didn't play well, my friends wouldn't like me, my family wouldn't like me. And ultimately, this is why I try to explain today. And this is why I love working with athletes similar to yourself, Linus, is that, we help them with building their careers and their futures. And really, we've got a big part to play in terms of helping a young athlete with their careers, I think.
Yeah. It's, you and I understand it, but when you are an athlete, and even as, when you kind of get to the age of 14, 15, it starts becoming work in a sense that you still believe that it's still fun, right? But then you don't become a normal human being anymore. When you meet family, friends, people that you meet on the street, it's not, hey, how are you? What are you doing with your life? It's more, how is soccer? How is golf? How is golf? How is golf? How are you doing? What's your next tournament? Oh, I saw you play there. What happened in that game? Or what, and it's not something that I really understood when I was that age, that it was important to find who I am as a person. And if you're watching out there, and if you're that age, you might be thinking, but it is so important for your future, because sports, if you live your life based on how many goals you let in, or how many goals you score, or how many putts I make, you're going to be miserable. It's just a fact, because you are going to fail so much in sports compared to succeed, right? And I think it's so important to find other interests, like you said, other hobbies, but also take distance from your sport and understand that that's, it's like a normal person, it's self-explanatory. Like if you have a bad day at work, you go home to your family, and then it's a separation between family and work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But with sports, it becomes your whole life, and it has to, in a sense, for you to succeed.
Do you think? Sorry to interrupt there, Linus. But
No, don't.
what do you think the role of the parents is? I think that's quite interesting. What do you think the role of the parents is within that to try and help, with managing that?
I think if you kind of associate it with a car, right? The parents are the tires. They're good.
Okay.
You get good grip, and you can go faster in turns, and you can go just quicker, right? If they're worn out, you gotta have to be careful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes you have no skid at all, which are parents that really don't care about what you do. Then you're gonna have to do it all on your own, right? All on feel. And I think parents have such a big role of educating themselves what it is to be an athlete and how it is to be parents to an athlete, right? Before you push someone in to play soccer or golf, or educate yourself what it is to become a professional athlete, even if that's not your mindset in the beginning, that, okay, my kid is going to be a professional soccer player. What does that mean? Or going to be a professional golfer? What does that mean? For instance, just financial support, planning for the future, because most kids are not going to succeed, and as an athlete, you can't plan for the future you can't plan to fail, in a sense, right? But parents can.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the role of the parents come in, understanding that family events, or helping the kids understand loss. You have to, you kids that played like sports in general are better at dealing with loss than other people are when it comes to just like, okay, how do we deal with this? How do we move forward? But when they're not athletes anymore, and you don't have that to fall back on, who are you as a person? And I think that's, both you and I played professional golf. That's all I knew. And then November 2016, I barely was able to walk off the golf course, and I haven't played an event since then, really. And you have to deal with so much stuff that your other friends, for instance, just a simple fact that most of my friends had worked for 7, 8, 9, almost 10 years when I started my working life.
Yeah.
And when you start your working life when you're 30, you're expected to know stuff that like, just the fact that, how do I pay taxes properly? Like how do I apply for a job? Or how do I get an apartment? Just how do I do all these things that you normally might have done way younger? You start with that. I started with that process when I was 30, where normal people in Sweden would start when they're 18, 19, right?
Yeah.
But then there is no understanding from society that, oh, you don't know that, or you don't know how to do that. Well, I didn't live here for 12 years,
Yeah.
And
I think that in football, it is a little bit of a bubble sometimes. Football in the UK at the big clubs is outside almost that bracket, because you have people who do that for you. If you're a young player coming through the club, you have what they call player liaison officers, and those people help you open a bank account, they help you rent a car, they help you find accommodation, all those sorts of things. They have support in place for that. And I just think sometimes the way that, where does that allow the athlete to become independent? Where is their role in that, in terms of, that's something that you need to figure out as early as possible, especially, also the financial side, managing, your finances. What does that look like? Okay, it's great to have someone do that for you if you have the money to pay them. But, the reality is that, again, 1 or 2% are going to play at the top level for the rest of their career. So, finding out about what that transition and, the financial side of things looks like after sport, and managing that is really, really key, I think. And we talk about loss. I think for me, when I was playing, it was a little bit different, because I was forced into almost preparing for a plan B. I was playing at the time. Things weren't going well. I was like, I have to do something here, because if I don't, I won't be able to get a job or anything.
Yeah.
And I almost prepared to fail to prepare for that transition. And this is what I think is so important that we emphasize is to make sure. It might seem far away for someone to to have to go through that transition, but it can also be around the corner, like you said with yourself, an injury, it can come from one day to the next. And really the key is, as soon as you get into any form of high level sport, to start preparing for your exit already from it.
I mean, I don't want to put down the system completely, because I think every country is different. Every sport is different. Golf tend to be put aside as their own entity in that sense, and that there is a lot of people that help golfers, and parents help them as well. But I think the biggest thing for me is that I didn't go through the conventional of staying in Sweden, playing golf here, looking for sponsors and all that stuff. So I wasn't able to create that network here. I had that in the US, in the sense where I got help from a sponsor. And so when I moved back, it was just, I wasn't in that conventional way, if that makes sense, to where when I wasn't in golf, it was golf or nothing, in a sense. That finding, doing things here. And I think from just more of the psychological standpoint, that I think it's okay to be sad that you didn't make it. And I think that's allowing yourself to feel bad. And that's, I think we're going to be talking more about that as we move on with this from the psychological standpoint. But I think it's what we do. We work with scouts for Athletes USA, and it's amazing to see the difference. Parents, if we're talking about strictly parents, you can see the parents that have really done a great job of educating the kids of speaking for themselves, where the kids can think for themselves, right? And then you can just look at the setup when we do these Zoom meetings with them. Then you can see what kid is going to make it in the US better than others, just based on how they're sitting and how they're communicating with us, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so important that we doing what we're doing, is because moving to another country and playing sports, not only are you going to try to play sports with other people, and obviously when you play golf, I think it's easier than you play soccer, because golf, it's still 18 holes. Obviously it's a different, environment, all that, but I still am doing the same thing. When you're playing soccer in the US, for instance, you still have to worry about, okay, different languages. You might have learned all the stuff in your own language, and then you got to learn it in English. And then you're playing with a Brazilian, a Mexican, an American, a Canadian, a Swede, a Danish guy, a UK guy. And you're trying to figure all that out as you're 18 years old or 19 years old. And you're also trying to figure out life, checking account, doing all that stuff. And obviously you get help with that. But I think it's so important to mention this and understand. And that's why, with Athletes USA, we try to focus on finding the right school, and not just a school, but it's also educating the kids and educating the parents what is the right school, right? And I think that's why it's so important, even if it's college sports, if it's professional sports, or if it's anything in life. When you're an athlete, you kind of have that tunnel vision of just focusing on your sport, right? But the people around you, I think, is the ones that really need to educate themselves on what's the best approach for me, right? And then for you traveled and you did all that stuff, so you might have, moving to the US might not have been a big deal for you. But if you're from a little bitty town and you played soccer there, and then you're just very talented, you have good video, and then all of a sudden you travel all the way to the other side of the world, which kind of happened to me. I've only been on vacations every once in a while, little small town, then all the way to the US. And it was a big shock for me. But on Instagram and Facebook, everyone thought I had a great time, right? And that's where social media comes into to become this kind of like, we become actors of pretending that everything is okay. And I think COVID has really brought us together in that sense, that now we have to, like, if you're only an athlete and you don't know what to do outside of that, COVID has really probably made a lot of people reflect over that. And I think that's the important thing, is that it's okay to be, it's okay that you might not feel great inside about certain things and you're uncertain about the future. That doesn't mean that you're depressed. It just means that you had to deal with stuff that you normally might not had to.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. I think it's, I mean, going back to what you were saying about the kids being independent and us being able to see that on a Zoom call, it really is the case that a lot of the time we are able to see who's going to adapt well to the US and who might not. Obviously sometimes we get it wrong, but really it's difficult at the moment with COVID. I mean, especially for players and athletes who are, perhaps not being able to get the videos that they're wanting to because, the season has been put on hold or games have been cancelled and they're looking to go to the US for fall 2021. And they're really struggling because, they're not able to get the footage that they need to get them into a college that maybe they deserve. And I think, a lot of the time, for us, and especially I think at Athletes USA, what we try to do is, be a support mechanism as much as possible for that athlete. And it's not always for me or for you to have to reach out to the athlete. It's for the athlete to use our help. Obviously we work with a lot of athletes who are going to the US, but really we are always available if that person needs help, but they need to ask us for that help. And I think what we're trying to say as well is that it's okay to ask for help. If someone isn't feeling perhaps as good as they thought they would, or they are struggling with something, reach out to us and, talk to us about that. We're more than happy to help. We want obviously everyone that comes through and works with us to have a fantastic experience. Granted, things come in the way like COVID and it doesn't always work as smooth as possible. But guess what? That's the life of sport. That's what happens when you become a professional athlete and you start playing in the highest level. You might be having, you're coming up to the Champions League final and you have an injury and you can't play. And that's something you've been looking forward to for your whole life, and these things happen in sport. And the key, I think, then is to express your feelings, to talk to people about, those sorts of things. And obviously, getting it off your chest, as they say, talking about it helps. It doesn't fix the situation, but it does help. And I think that's what we want to try and do, especially myself, yourself, and everyone at Athletes USA. I know we really care about the athletes we work with.
And I mean, I just want to make sure that everyone that's watching this or listening to this is that I think that everyone working with this in the business is what they really want to do. I don't think you get into this line of work if you don't want to help athletes. And if you don't, then that's up to you, whatever. But in a sense, we have that obligation, especially with me being in the US and been there for almost 12 years and have learned the experience of going there. And the reason it's a simple fact, but the reason why I love college sports is it's simple because you can combine, striving to be the best athlete you possibly can be, and you get an education at the same time. Because education is so important. I cannot stress that enough. And it's something that I feel from Sweden is that if you're an athlete, when you finish high school, you're either an athlete or a student. And it's super hard to combine both. But in the US, they've found a way of combining both of them together. And that's why I think going there, of getting your bachelor's, if you want to do a master's or PhD, you can do that really wherever. But just the bachelor's fact of things. And if you are an athlete, you can use your skills of getting a scholarship. But more importantly, you get so much more than just athletics and education. You get to meet people from all over the world, and you get an education of life that is so valuable. And I think that's what made me the person I am today. But you also have to prepare for that moment. And that's really what we are trying to do with this as well, is helping you get educated parents. What can we do? Athletes, how do you prepare of going to the US? Where should I go? Where would you fit in? Would you like to go place where it's religious based, or do you not like religious based school? Do you want to go we're in the South, and where does that mean? How is it to be an athlete in Alabama and Arkansas compared to California? Like maybe you think that, oh, I want to go to the sunny, all this great places. Well, if you're an indoor athlete, you might be better off in a state where there's a little more like mellow and a little chill of things around you. You might not want to be in a big city. So either way, it is so important to investigate who you are as a person outside of athletics, and be okay with, can I enjoy this place even if I don't play sports? And if that's the answer is yes, then that place might be the right school for you. I will go into more in detail later on when we do this, what it means for different levels, the D1, D2, D3, and all that. But and we would love to get your questions and feedbacks for this as well. But as far as coaching goes, what would be one thing that you would end this one, Fabian, just for athletes and parents that you noticed during years that you work with Athletes USA? Well, what would be your tip for an athlete and parents that are looking into this if they want to go to the US?
I think, there's quite a few things that are important to know, really. I think, one of the things I would always say is don't delay. Start this process as early as possible. Obviously, we offer free evaluations. I think a lot of the time when we reach out to an athlete, they think that it's, we're trying to sell something, or it's we're trying to convince them to do something. It's absolutely not the case. All we're trying to do is inform, because information is key. And as you always say, information is power, or knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And that's what we try to do, is educate as early as possible, give you, as much information for you to make a decision on whether you think this could be a good or a valuable experience for your son, for your daughter, or for the athlete themselves to go through. And, we try to do that as early as possible because that maximizes opportunities. But really, when we speak about the US, is also don't take it for granted, because there are some top athletes in the US, the caliber of, obviously is sport dependent, but even for soccer, or football, the caliber of athlete is getting better and better. And you really, you have to be at a top level. You have to prepare from a young age. You have to start getting your videos together. You have to start making sure you're focused on the academic side of things, and all those things that we want to tell and explain to you, so you have all the tools to make sure that if you decide to go this route, you're well prepared. And that's the key for us, really, is to help inform you, making sure you prepare, all the facts. Any questions, we're always there to help. And don't be afraid to ask. When we have calls, make sure you write down questions. Make sure you know what to ask us. Make sure you've done your research online. All those things are key. And you really, if you want to go to the US and you want to obtain a good scholarship, you have to be well prepared, and you have to be a good athlete and a good student. And that's, simple fact.
I want to leave with this, and I love the way you explain that, Fabian. And I just want you to know, regardless who you work with, if you do it on your own, or if you work with Athletes USA, or whoever you decide to put your faith into, just remember that you are the car, right? The faster you are, the faster you can take turns and everything. And that's based on your athletic, your academic, your SAT, and your TOEFL. We'll go through what all that means, but that's your marketing value. And what we can do is help you gather all that and make sure as many coaches as possible will see that. But then there is so much more that goes into the process. That's just getting noticed, right? Then you have to figure out what should I be asking the coaches? What type of school am I looking for? And really, that's the reason why you should start the process early. And another reason is, if you don't know this, is that the coaches, for most sports, the coaches can start talking to you and even verbally commit with you almost 2 years before you graduate. So if you graduate in 2022, the coaches could start talking to you around 15th of June in 2020, which means that if 2020, 22. Yeah. So if you're a 2022 athlete, the coaches could already start talking to you in June of 2020. which means that the better you are, the earlier you need to start the process. Obviously, it's not too late, but that's just a strict fact. So if you are going, keep that in mind, that in 2 years before you graduate high school, you should start the process to make sure that the coaches knows that you're willing to go to college. Because if they don't know you're willing to go, they won't be able to pick you. Obviously, the top athletes get recruited by great schools early on. Not much we can do to help you on that front, but we can make sure that you get the right information. And we are here as a tool for the coaches to get athletes to come to their schools. We don't work for anyone but you, just like a lawyer or an accountant would do. And it's very, very important. There's a lot of rules with the NCAA that we follow to the T with all this stuff. All we can do is give you information, but you are in charge, and you should feel comfortable with whoever you work with, and also educate yourself. Educate yourself. Knowledge is power. That's the biggest key in all that. And we hope that we can give you as much knowledge as possible, but don't take our word for it. Don't take anyone's word for it, really. Just take this information, use that as key points for you to search on your own to make sure that all the information is valid. That's how you find the best schools, and that's how you kind of move on with everything in life. So
yeah, I think that's a good way to finish, isn't it, Linus? Obviously this has been an introduction as well, a little bit. This is the first podcast we are sort of doing together. So, it's
actually called a video cast, Fabian.
A video cast, then.
Whatever it's called. It's video with sound, with information for you all, right?
Exactly. That's what we're here to do. We're here to inform, and to, really what we want to do is we want to talk about the US and Athletes USA and the experiences, but really it's about, what it means to be an athlete as well, the experiences we have had, and share, that with all of you guys and girls. So, we hope you've enjoyed this first episode. Absolutely. If you call it that, Linus. Is it an episode?
If you enjoyed it, click on that little subscribe button right above here somewhere, maybe there, and share with your friends. If you don't want to share it, let us know why you wouldn't share it, and if there's information you want us to put in here that would help you more. So this is for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and hope to see you next time. Thank you, Fabian.
Likewise. Thank you. See you later, everyone.
Thank you.